Over the next couple of days, we're going to be talking almost exclusively about landing spots, about draft capital, and outlooks for the rookies that heard their name called in the 2023 NFL draft. So I wanted to make sure that we got a video quickly out on the channel about the veterans who were impacted by the NFL draft. As I go through, I'm updating my dynasty rankings, my rookie rankings, which of course you guys can get on flockfantasy.com, and using the promo code FSC, you'll get 30% off plus a 2-day free trial. As I'm going through these rankings, some of these vets are on the move. Some of them are going up from, dodging a bullet in the NFL draft. Some of them are going down because they added backfield competition or whatever the case is. So I'm going to break down probably 10 to 15 names of guys that are either on the rise or on the fall. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. I know this time of year brings a lot of new eyes. So if you haven't checked out our content, feel free to check out the rest of it, and definitely hit the subscribe button if you like what you see. Stick around here for all your redraft, your dynasty, your best ball needs this summer. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So before we get into it, just a reminder that I'm not really going to talk about any wide receivers in this video, because wide receivers generally are less landing spot proof. And if people get added to their team, that usually just makes the offense better, and talented receivers command targets. So even though Tyler Lockett and Keenan Allen had a receiver added to their receiving core, KJ Osborne, some of these guys, if they're still talented receivers, they can still command targets and be viable fantasy options, although they did see a downtick in value on the open market. But we're going to focus mainly on running backs and quarterbacks in this video, because their value is usually tied into opportunity, right? Running backs need touches, quarterbacks need to start, that kind of thing. So the first guy that we're going to talk about is DeAndre Swift, who was one of the biggest fallers after night one, because the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 and they signed Montgomery in free agency. We had no idea what we were doing with DeAndre Swift, but then became one of the bigger risers because he saw some redemption on day 3 of the draft when he was traded for a 2025 fourth rounder and a 7th round move up to the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously defending NFC champions. Here's where he settled in my rankings. Right now, he is my RB17. I have him just outside this tier 3 of running backs, like you guys can see on the screen, with more secure workloads, a little bit younger guys. I think he should be right outside of this area. And the reason I think that he shouldn't just shoot right back up to like top 10 running back in Dynasty is because I think Rashad Penny will be involved. The Eagles franchise really devalues the running back position, hence why they didn't take Bijan or, be in Bijan's market whatsoever. So they are not going to extend DeAndre Swift. This is probably a 1 year, and then his contract is up. He's going to hit the open market and probably not get a shit ton of money on the open market, because that's how running backs go. To me, it's a downgrade in receiving volume as well. We have Jalen Hurts, who is a mobile quarterback. He's not a check down Charlie like Jared Goff. And he might still have the same issues that he had in Detroit, where Rashad Penny's the early down guy. He's taking away most of the carries. Maybe he's not getting goal line work again, like Jamal Williams was taking away. Plus, they have Kenneth Gainwell, who's also another capable receiving back. It's possible that this is like a 40% snap share guy. It's also possible he's the most talented back on the team and he wins out the job 60, 70% of the opportunities. But I think that is far less likely than the Eagles just deploying a committee, as they've always done, and DeAndre Swift just being efficient on whatever touches he gets. So he's definitely in a better place now. I will say that. He was definitely, in a bad place when he was on the Detroit Lions and they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. But I'm not going to go crazy here thinking he's some elite dynasty running back. If you can sell this guy for any first-round capital, do it. Even if it's the 109 this year, a late first in 2024, I would sell him for any first-round capital if I can get it, because he's a big name. He had a lot of value on the open market. And I think the fact that the Lions were willing to trade him kind of signals the fact that he's not going to become the elite running back that we thought he could have became early on in his career. So that was the big time news that came out of the NFL draft. Another big time faller here is Tyler Allgeier, running back for the Atlanta Falcons. And I would say Algier's price was relatively conservative going into the NFL draft. So I didn't think he was like a huge sell candidate, because I think most people expected them to add a running back of some kind. But the fact that they added the running back in this draft, Bijan Robinson, is definitely big time bad news for Tyler Allgeier. He was a mid to late 20s running back in Dynasty. Now he's down in the mid 40s. But I do think that he's priced a little bit unfairly, because we're still talking about a running back that averaged 5 yards per carry, was a top 5 rusher in DVOA, and rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. So to me, I see a very talented running back who's now a handcuff or a high priority like backup type of situation. It's kind of like an A.J. Dillon type of role that I expect for Tyler Allgeier next year. This is one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. And even though Bijan Robinson is great and he's probably going to get every, piece of work under the sun, Tyler Allgeier will probably still be involved to some degree. And I think he'll be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy as well. It stings because he could have been, an RB2 next year if he would have survived the NFL draft, but it's not hopeless in my opinion. If I was a contender right now and I had like the 306 and somebody's willing to give me Tyler Allgeier as like my RB4, my RB5 on my roster for a contending team, I would absolutely go out and buy him right now. So he's definitely a faller because they added Bijan, but I think people are overreacting just a little bit because I do think he will have value in best ball, in redraft, whatever the case is. So Dameon Pierce and Rhamondre Stevenson, in my opinion, are two of the bigger risers as well after the NFL draft at running back. These two guys were awesome in redraft last year, right? They were both like borderline RB1s when they were on the field. They were risky holds in Dynasty because both of them were fourth-round draft capital running backs. There was not a ton of investment by their team laid into them, and it was possible that if Bijan was on the board at 12, then the Texans might have drafted Bijan Robinson. If Bijan was on the board at 14, then the Patriots might have drafted Bijan Robinson. But all these guys added to their backfields were the Texans added Devin Singletary in free agency, and that's it. The Patriots are going to rely, it looks like, on the depth that they drafted last year with Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong on day 3. And James Robinson, who they brought in. So in my opinion, I think these guys are set up to be borderline RB1, low-end RB2, or high-end RB2s in redraft yet again this season. So I moved them up from, the mid, teens at running back to RB11 and RB12 respectively, with Dameon Pierce slightly ahead. It looks like the NFL is realizing that when you hit on a late round running back, there's no real reason to go out and try and replace him. Just ride him into the ground, let him go on in free agency and sign with a different team. From a redraft perspective, Dameon Pierce and Rhamondre Stevenson, like I said, are going to still be set for like third round redraft picks or something like that. So they're still young. Pierce potentially having 2 or more years of team control, RB2 level production. I think that is worth a top 12 dynasty running back, because at running back, we know that the shelf life is not very long. So if you have a guy who's going to get a solid workload for 2 years, I think he deserves to be highly ranked and a good investment for contenders. If you're investing in running backs, you should definitely be wary that it puts you in a competitive window in general. But this is great news for both guys, because like I said, they could have drafted Bijan, they could have drafted Gibbs, and they didn't. Not only did they not draft those guys, they didn't draft anybody to compete with them for touches. So great news for those two guys. Kenneth Walker, however, was not as lucky. He is one of the biggest fallers, in my opinion, from the NFL draft, because we're going to talk about the Charbonnet side pretty much all week when we talk about rookie rankings and that kind of thing. But Walker now loses a ton of his ceiling that he probably did have if they didn't draft Zach Charbonnet. It's not that Kenneth Walker isn't a good running back anymore, because he definitely is still one of the best young backs in the NFL. But to be honest, I think this will be another Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt type of headache for the next 3 to 4 years. From a real football perspective, this might be the best 1-2 punch in the NFL next year. Kenneth Walker is a great young running back. Zach Charbonnet, I thought, was an awesome prospect just behind Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB3. It's that each guy is going to cannibalize the other, right? Charbonnet is a better receiver, so I think he'll get more of the receiving work. He's probably going to cap Kenneth Walker on the goal line as well, and he's probably going to be like an early down back only, just like we see out of Nick Chubb in Cleveland, but he's going to be very efficient. Therefore, he's going to be fantasy relevant. So it's just going to be a little frustrating. I think Kenneth Walker's still valuable. I think he's a good running back still, but I did move him down my rankings below Travis Etienne, who, even though he had Tank Bigsby added to his backfield, it's a little bit less of a hit to his workload. He's now below the 2 rookies, Bijan and Gibbs, and then also some of these competitive running backs like Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and even Josh Jacobs. For me, he settles in as my dynasty RB9, which is a fall from grace considering he was my RB3 before the draft. So definitely, my RB4 before the draft. So definitely not ideal for Kenneth Walker. Number 5 riser is Javonte Williams. And it's basically because, I don't know about you guys, I own Javonte Williams in 3 of my 8 leagues, and I was clenching. I thought the Zach Charbonnet bomb was going to get dropped in Denver. That's what I thought was going to happen. It wouldn't have shocked me at all if in round 2 they drafted a running back, or round 3 they drafted a running back. Not only did we not get that, Samaje Perine is the only guy that's been added to this backfield since Javonte Williams' injury. They sent off Melvin Gordon, obviously. It's just Samaje Perine. It's just Javonte Williams. And that tells me 2 things. Number 1, Javonte Williams, I guess, is progressing well in his rehab, and he might be on track to start in week 1, or at least be on the field for training camp, or whatever the case is. And number 2, they intend to give him a lot of work when healthy, which is no guarantee. Sometimes at running back, even if you get injured, it's not like the coaching staff is eagerly waiting for you to come back, because you played the most replaceable position in the NFL. So it's possible that Javonte gets injured, they draft a Zach Charbonnet in round 2, and they just go, yeah, Zach's the healthier, younger, fresher legs, and he's going to carry the rock for us. So to me, it cements him in my opinion, as a good hold for rebuilders. I'm not going to go out and buy him or anything like that because running backs coming off of ACL tears, especially compound ACL tears like Javonte is coming off of, it's possible that his value still does dip at this point if we don't get him on the field for training camp, or if he's not ready for week one, or if he doesn't look as good, just like we saw out of J.K. Dobbins last year. But I do think this definitely helps him because they could have, like I said, replaced him in the NFL draft, and it's definitely good news that they did not. So number 6 faller here is Khalil Herbert. And I think Khalil Herbert's a good running back, don't get me wrong, but I think it's far-fetched that anybody thought he was going to be some workhorse for the Chicago Bears, especially in a team and in an offense that runs the ball as much as Chicago did last year. You had to imagine they were going to add somebody at some point. And not only is Roschon Johnson, who went in the 4th round to the Chicago Bears, the perfect complement for Khalil Herbert and his skill set, he's also the perfect guy to replace David Montgomery because he's another bigger back like Montgomery who runs with good patience, has a good pass catcher, good pass protector, who's elusive enough to create on his own. So I really like this fit from Roschon Johnson's perspective. We're going to talk about that as we go through mock drafts and stuff like that. By the end of training camp, I would not be shocked if we're looking at nearly an identical split from Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert as we saw with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. So I really love that fit from Roschon Johnson's perspective, and I don't love that fit from Khalil Herbert's perspective because he's probably going to be the same guy he's been most of his career, which is has some weeks, flex appeal, but probably not a guy you're starting unless the guy in front of him gets injured. And I know Roschon was a 4th round pick, and it's no guarantee that he starts over Khalil Herbert, but I think he's a better running back than Khalil Herbert. He was my RB5 coming into the draft, and I think his skill set is more well-rounded and better suited for an early down workload. So really like that for Roschon, not as much for Khalil Herbert. Now let's get into the quarterback position. The veteran quarterbacks who survived, definitely big-time risers here, and that was Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Derek Carr, and Jimmy Garoppolo. These guys had nobody added to replace them in the long term. Of course, the Saints did draft Jake Haener in the 4th round, who I was a big fan of, and Aiden O'Connell was drafted to the Las Vegas Raiders, but they didn't draft Will Levis. They didn't draft Hendon Hooker. They didn't draft anybody really of note. Cousins and Geno especially were the big 2 winners in this group because not only did they survive Will Levis and Hendon Hooker, they didn't add anybody. And they also drafted young wide receivers to help their redraft outputs, right? Jordan Addison, glove fit to the Minnesota Vikings. Perfect complement to Justin Jefferson. Probably one of my favorite landing spots of any rookie in this entire class. And then also Geno Smith gets Jackson Smith and Jigba added to his receiving core. Now he has Lockett, Metcalf, Smith and Jigba, Charbonnet, and Walker behind him in the backfield. Noah Fant at tight end. He is well set up to succeed in his 2nd year with Seattle as the starter there. And then aside from these 2 guys, like Aaron Rodgers and those 2 guys are the premier like win now quarterbacks. If you guys need one, go out and trade for these guys. I think they're going to be safe for this year for sure, maybe even going into next year as well. And then even Derek Carr and Jimmy G, these guys look to be solid QB 2-3 type of options. And Jimmy Garoppolo, for what it's worth, also had the best tight end in the draft, in my opinion, Michael Mayer, added to his offense to go along with Devontae Adams, to go along with Jacoby Myers, to go along with Hunter Renfrow and Josh Jacobs in the backfield. So Jimmy Garoppolo should be, a solid QB3 for you guys who are contenders who did not lose his job in the NFL draft, which is definitely ideal. The quarterbacks who did not survive, however, were Ryan Tannehill, who had Will Levis drafted at the top of the 2nd round, and Jared Goff, who had Hendon Hooker drafted in the 3rd round. Now, Tannehill is the one that's much more concerning because Levis, A, was the better prospect than Hendon Hooker, and B, has more draft capital invested into him. I wouldn't be shocked if Tennessee is a really bad team this year, and by week 5, week 6, Ryan Tannehill is either traded before the deadline or he's benched or whatever the case is. Hell, he might even not even start games for them this year before the season even starts. They might go into the season with Will Levis because they're a rebuilding team. I wouldn't be shocked if he's out of Tennessee. I think he's still a good quarterback, and if he goes to a new landing spot, maybe Washington, maybe Atlanta, some team like that, maybe Tampa Bay, then it's possible that he could be a starter and be a productive guy. So if I have him in Dynasty, I'm not totally pissed about this because I think he wasn't long for Tennessee anyway, but he definitely is a bit of a faller right now for me given the uncertainty. And then Jared Goff is less of a concern because, like I said, I was not a big Hendon Hooker guy before the draft. I think 3rd round is exactly where he should have gone. I don't think this 1st round buzz was warranted. I don't think he was that good of a quarterback. But contractually, we know Jared Goff and his agent did not extend with the Detroit Lions. And the fact that they drafted a 3rd round quarterback and did not extend Jared Goff points to me that he's kind of on an audition this year, right? It's a 1-year prove it kind of season. even though he was good last year, when you're a middling starting quarterback like Jared Goff is, you need to be good every year to keep your job. You can't have a down season like Justin Herbert did last year and still be fine. Justin Herbert has proven that he's an elite quarterback. Jared Goff has not. So Jared Goff is probably, on audition this year, which makes him a riskier asset to hold if you're a contender. If I was a contender and I needed QB2 production, I would rather go sell Jared Goff for Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, or Aaron Rodgers, knowing that those guys are probably not going to lose their jobs. Maybe even though they're older than Jared Goff, have more long-term appeal in their current situation. So those were the major winners and losers. Here are some indirect winners that I noticed as well. I'll go rapid fire on these guys, so I'm not taking up too much of your time. The Steelers offense, definitely big time winner in my opinion. Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris specifically were big time winners because they added a left tackle in Broderick Jones from Georgia, who's good for everybody. He helps the offense, he helps the pass protection, the run game, and he's also, played in the SEC the last couple of years, so he should be able to adjust to the NFL rather quickly. Speaking of Georgia players, they also added Darnell Washington in the third round, who's an excellent run blocker, big for Najee Harris, and he frees up Pat Freiermuth as well to play more in the slot and as a move tight end because he's primarily going to be blocking in line. And even though they invested in a tight end, I actually do think it's good for Pat Freiermuth rather than bad. I'm starting to warm up to Najee Harris a little bit in Dynasty and Kenny Pickett as well, because you guys know I probably was not high on them before, but the Steelers are building a solid young offense in my opinion. They have Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren out of the backfield, Kenny Pickett at quarterback. I think this team could be actually pretty good next year. And for what it's worth, Najee Harris did come into the season with a foot injury. Would it shock me if he had a bounce back RB1 season with a big workload yet again, now healthy, playing in a better offense? No, it wouldn't shock me. And I think I was a little hard on Najee Harris, putting him down where I had him pre-draft. So I am pivoting a little bit here. You guys know I did not like Najee Harris before. I'm saying I think I'm a little bit more into him now. Which might be too late because people might be coming around to that, but it's better to be, late than not show up at all. And a couple more backs that dodge some bullets that I think are interesting as well. Keep in mind that we still have some free agents available like Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, some of the trade targets that have been talked about with Dalvin Cook and such. But these guys definitely dodged some bullets. Rashad White, the only running back they added was Sean Tucker, who is an undrafted free agent. Even though I liked Sean Tucker, he went undrafted. And it's possible that he is good enough that he works his way into an early down role there. But I do think it's good news for Rashad White that they didn't draft, again, Zach Charbonnet or somebody like that in the second or the third round, which I did think was possible. I thought third round comes around and they're going to draft Roschon Johnson. That was my expectation, and that's not what happened. So good news for Rashad White. Looks like he's going to be the primary back there for the most part in Tampa Bay. J.K. Dobbins, I am really excited about him this year because he has the best supporting cast around him and around Lamar specifically, with Flowers, with Odell Beckham Jr., with Rashad Bateman back healthy, with Mark Andrews there, which means more pass attempts coming. Todd Monken's coming in, who I firmly believe is going to move this offense more in the passing direction. And I firmly believe this about J.K. Dobbins. You guys might think I'm crazy because he doesn't have the crazy, ball production, but I think this guy is one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. And if they throw the ball more, again, it's still Lamar Jackson. He's still going to run the ball a lot, but if they throw the ball more, then that's good for his receiving workload. And I do think now 2 years removed from his ACL tear, they absolutely added nobody. It's just J.K. Dobbins. It's just Gus Edwards. And I think J.K. Dobbins is in for a great season this year, assuming they don't add any more guys. Cam Akers, it felt like the Rams didn't like Cam Akers and we're going to promptly replace him in the NFL draft. But Zach Evans in round 6 doesn't really scare me. And I am happy for the one share that I do have of Cam Akers because it's on a competitive team. Maybe he's, an RB2 this season. I don't think he's going to be some huge RB1 level breakout like I once thought, but I do think it's good news for him that they didn't add anybody. So anybody else win or lose in the draft that I forgot, leave it down below in the comments. And if you guys want to get some stake in the action, Underdog Fantasy going absolutely sicko mode, dropping BBM4 as soon as the NFL draft was done. And you guys can get in on the action right now. $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. Just an absolutely absurd amount of money up for grabs in this tournament. The prize pool is insane. And right now you can get 100% back on your first deposit if you haven't checked out Underdog yet by using the promo code FSE when you sign up. So if you deposit $50 on there using the promo code FSE, not only will you have 2 shots at BBM for $25 entries with your $50 that you signed up with, you'll also get an additional 2 free entries by using our promo code. You'll have your shot at $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. Like I said, big shout out to Underdog. Super excited to make a ton of content surrounding BBM for this summer, and also next weekend when I'm going to be in Montreal where it's actually legal to draft Best Ball Mania 4 team. So I'm really excited for that. Stay tuned for those streams next weekend. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.